So whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Judge. I'd like to call Ben Bonner as my first witness.
All right, have Mr. Bonner, please.
Please be stepped out in the hallway. There was no room for
That's fine. If we can announce for Mr. Bonner. Yes, sir. If you'll come around and come up here, if you'll remain standing and just raise your right hand when you get up here, okay? You remain standing, raise your right hand. You swear or affirm the statements given before the court date.
Picture this. It's 7:30 in the morning, February 20th, 2025. A 911 operator picks up a call. On the other end, a 16-year-old girl sobbing, saying her little sister just found their parents dead in bed, both shot. No intruder, no break-in. The operator stays on the line trying to calm her down. But here's what the operator doesn't know yet, what nobody knows yet, is that in 4 months, that same crying teenager will be sitting in a jail cell charged with their murder. This is the story of Sarah Grace Patrick. And I need to warn you, the deeper we dig into this case, the more your gut is going to twist. Because by the end of this, you're going to question everything you thought you knew about family, innocence, and whether justice even exists anymore. Let's get into it. Carroll County, Georgia. If you've never heard of it, don't worry. Most people haven't. It's about 50 miles west of Atlanta, small town America, the kind of place where people still leave their doors unlocked at night, where neighbors know each other's names, where violent crime is something you see on the news, not in your own backyard. Until February 20th, 2025. That morning, James Brock, 45, and his wife, Kristen Brock, 41, were found shot to death in their own bed. Not in a random act of violence, not in a home invasion. They were executed while they slept, in the one place they should have felt safest. Their 5-year-old daughter found them. I want you to really sit with that for a second. A kindergartner, waking up, looking for her parents, walking into their bedroom, and finding that. A trauma so deep, so shattering, that no amount of therapy will ever fully heal it. Their teenage daughter, Sarah Grace Patrick, called 911. She was hysterical, confused. She told police she had no idea what happened, that maybe someone broke in, shot them, and disappeared into the night. But here's the problem. Investigators didn't find any evidence of an intruder, and 4 months later, Sarah Grace Patrick was arrested and charged as an adult with double murder. So what really happened in that house? Was this a cold, calculated killing by a teenage sociopath? Or did the justice system just destroy an innocent girl's life to close a case they couldn't solve? I don't have all the answers. But I'm going to walk you through every single detail we do know. And by the end, you tell me what you believe. Before we get into the horror of what happened, we need to talk about who James and Kristen were. Because they weren't just victims. They were people. They had lives, dreams, routines. They were trying to build something. James Brock was 45 years old, a stepdad trying to navigate the messy, complicated reality of blended families. He wasn't Sarah Grace's biological father, but he'd stepped into that role when he married Kristen. And from what we know, he was doing his best, showing up, providing, trying to be the father figure Sarah Grace and her younger siblings needed. Kristen Brock was 41, a mother first and foremost. She had children from a previous relationship, including Sarah Grace. and she'd worked hard to create stability for them. Blended families aren't easy. Anyone who's lived through one knows that. There are adjustments, tensions, growing pains. But Kristen was committed. She wanted her family to work. They lived in a modest home on Tyus Carrollton Road. Quiet neighborhood, nothing flashy. Just a family trying to live a normal life. And here's the thing that makes this case so gut-wrenching. On the night of February 19th, they went to bed like any other night. Maybe they talked about bills or weekend plans or what to make for dinner the next day. Maybe they kissed their kids goodnight. Maybe they set an alarm for the morning. They had no idea. Those were their last moments. That someone in their own home, was about to walk into their bedroom and end their lives while they slept. I don't know about you, but that thought alone makes my skin crawl. February 20th, 2025. Early morning. The sun is just starting to come up over Carroll County. Inside the Brock family home, a 5-year-old girl wakes up. She's groggy, rubbing her eyes, probably looking for her parents like any kid does in the morning. She walks down the hallway, opens the door to their bedroom, and what she sees will haunt her for the rest of her life. James and Kristen Brock, lying in their bed. Blood. Stillness. A scene no child, no person should ever have to witness. She doesn't fully understand what she's seeing. She's 5. But she knows something is wrong. She runs to find her older sister, Sarah Grace. At 7:30 a.m., a 911 call comes in. Sarah Grace Patrick is on the line. Her voice is frantic, trembling, broken. She tells the operator that her little sister found their parents dead, that they've been shot, that she doesn't know what happened. The operator tries to keep her calm, asks questions, tries to assess the situation. And within minutes, Carroll County Sheriff's deputies are racing to the scene. When they arrive, they find exactly what Sarah Grace described. James and Kristen Brock, both deceased from gunshot wounds, lying in their bed. The weapon? A gun that was already in the house. The killer? Someone who knew exactly where to find it. But here's where investigators immediately start to feel uneasy. There's no sign of forced entry. No broken windows, no kicked-in doors. One door is slightly ajar, but there's no evidence of a struggle. No muddy footprints, no ransacked rooms, nothing stolen, nothing out of place. This wasn't a burglary. This wasn't some random act of violence. This was targeted, personal. And whoever did this, they didn't have to break in because they were already inside. Sarah Grace tells investigators she was asleep in her room when it happened. She says she didn't hear anything. Not the gunshots, not a struggle, nothing. Until her sister woke her up. She suggests that maybe someone came in through the unlocked door, killed her parents, and slipped away unnoticed. But investigators aren't buying it. Because here's the thing. 2 gunshots were fired inside that house. 2. In the dead of night, in a quiet rural neighborhood, and Sarah Grace, whose bedroom was just down the hall, claims she didn't hear a thing. That's when the investigation starts to shift, because if there was no intruder, then someone in that house is lying. And all eyes turn to Sarah Grace. For the first few days after the murders, Sarah Grace Patrick is treated like a grieving daughter, a traumatized teenager who just lost her mother and stepfather in the most horrific way imaginable. Investigators interview her gently. They offer support. They let her stay with relatives while they process the crime scene. But behind the scenes, detectives are digging hard. They start with her phone. And what they find is disturbing. In the days immediately following the murders, Sarah Grace is all over social media, posting, sharing, talking about the tragedy. Now, on the surface, that might seem normal. This is 2025 after all. Teenagers process grief online. They reach out to friends. They seek support in digital spaces. But here's what made investigators uncomfortable. Some of her posts didn't feel like grief. They felt performative, like she was playing a role, like she was crafting a narrative for an audience rather than genuinely mourning. So detectives go deeper. They pull her search history, her text messages, her internet activity from the weeks before the murders. And what they uncover, according to law enforcement, is what they call mountains of evidence. Now, the specifics of that evidence haven't been fully disclosed to the public yet, because this case is still pending trial. But sources close to the investigation have hinted at searches related to guns, crime scenes, and, most chillingly, how to get away with murder. I want you to think about that for a second. If those reports are true, that means Sarah Grace wasn't just caught off guard by a tragedy. She was researching it, planning it. And that changes everything, but it's not just digital evidence. Forensic analysis of the crime scene starts to paint a damning picture. Ballistics experts determine the trajectory of the bullets. Gunshot residue tests are conducted. The positioning of the victims, the lack of defensive wounds, the fact that both were shot while lying in bed, it all points to one thing. The killer was someone they trusted, someone who could walk into that room without raising alarm. And here's what really seals it for investigators. The weapon used in the murders was a gun from inside the house. That means the killer didn't bring a weapon with them. They knew where it was kept. They had access to it. They were familiar with the home. By early summer of 2025, the evidence is overwhelming. And on July 8th, nearly 5 months after the murders, Sarah Grace Patrick is arrested. She's charged with 2 counts of murder and 6 additional charges, including aggravated assault. And here's the bombshell that sends shockwaves through the community. She's being charged as an adult, a 16-year-old girl, facing life in prison, no chance of rehabilitation in the juvenile system, the full, unforgiving weight of adult criminal justice. And honestly, this is where I start to feel conflicted. Because on one hand, if the evidence is as strong as prosecutors say, then Sarah Grace Patrick murdered 2 people in cold blood, her own mother and stepfather, while they slept. That's as brutal as it gets. But on the other hand, she's 16. Her brain isn't fully developed. She's still a kid. And if the system treats her like an adult, are we saying there's no hope for her? No chance of change? That at 16 you're already beyond saving? I don't have an easy answer to that, and I'm not sure anyone does. Okay, I need to pause here because this is where the case gets really complicated. Do you think 16-year-olds should ever be tried as adults for murder? Comment. Yes or no, and tell me why. And if you're on the fence, if you're as conflicted as I am, comment. Depends. I want to see where everyone stands on this because it's one of the biggest debates in criminal justice right now. Also, if this case is gripping you the way it's gripping me, hit that subscribe button. We cover cases like this every single week. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. August 2025. A bond hearing is scheduled for Sarah Grace Patrick. It's supposed to be a routine proceeding. Defense asks for bail. Prosecution argues against it. Judge makes a decision. But what happens in that courtroom is anything but routine. Family members pack the room. And here's the thing. They're not there to support each other. They're there to fight. Some relatives stand up and plead for Sarah Grace's release. They swear she's innocent. They say there's no way, no possible way she could have done this. They describe her as a good kid, a loving sister, someone who would never hurt anyone. They beg the judge to let her come home. But then, other family members stand up, and they tell a completely different story. They say they're afraid of her, that if she's released, they fear for their safety. One relative looks Judge Dustin Hightower in the eye and says, "I believe she's capable of violence. I believe she's dangerous." Let that sink in. Her own family, people who've known her since she was born, who've watched her grow up, who've sat at dinner tables with her, are standing in a courtroom saying they're terrified of her. And honestly, that's one of the most chilling details of this entire case. Because if the people closest to you are divided on whether you're a victim or a monster, what does that say? Judge Hightower denies bond. He cites flight risk and public safety concerns. Sarah Grace Patrick will remain in custody until her trial, and as she's led out of the courtroom, the family is left fractured. Some are sobbing, believing an innocent girl is being destroyed. Others are breathing a sigh of relief, believing a killer is right where she belongs. There's no unity, no closure. Just a family ripped apart by tragedy and suspicion. January 5th, 2026. Today, this morning, this was supposed to be the day. The trial of Sarah Grace Patrick was scheduled to begin. Media trucks were lined up outside the Carroll County courthouse. Family members had been preparing for weeks, emotionally bracing themselves for what would likely be a brutal, exhausting, gut-wrenching trial. Prosecutors were ready to present their case. Defense attorneys were ready to fight back. The community was ready for answers. And then, hours before jury selection was set to begin, the trial was postponed. No detailed explanation, no dramatic courtroom moment, just delayed. Pushed back to August 2026. Now, trial delays happen all the time. Defense needs more time to review evidence. Witnesses become unavailable. Procedural issues arise. It's frustrating, but it's part of the system. But for the families of James and Kristen Brock, this is torture. Another 7 months of waiting. Another 7 months of wondering if there will ever be justice. Another 7 months of reliving the worst day of their lives over and over again. And for Sarah Grace Patrick, she sits in a cell, still 17 years old. By the time her trial actually happens in August, she'll be closer to 18, legally an adult in every sense of the word. So the question remains, will she face a jury as a teenager who made a tragic, irreversible mistake, or as an adult who committed a calculated, unforgivable crime? We won't know until August. And honestly, the wait is agonizing. Here's what keeps me up at night about this case. If Sarah Grace Patrick is guilty, and that's still a big if until a jury decides, then we have to ask ourselves, what drove a 16-year-old girl to murder her own mother and stepfather? Was there abuse in that house that we don't know about? Was she being mistreated, controlled, Was this an act of desperation, of survival, of a teenager who saw no other way out? Or was this something darker? A calculated act of violence driven by anger, resentment, or something we can't even begin to understand? Because here's the thing. Teenage brains aren't fully developed. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for impulse control, decision-making, understanding consequences, doesn't finish maturing until your mid-20s. That's science. So when a 16-year-old does something horrific, are they fully responsible? Or are they still kids? And if Sarah Grace didn't do this, if the evidence is circumstantial, if investigators got tunnel vision and pinned this on her because they couldn't find anyone else to blame, then we're watching an innocent girl's life get destroyed in real time. And that's just as horrifying. This case doesn't have easy answers. It doesn't have a clear villain or a clear victim. It's messy, it's complicated, it's human, and that's what makes it so damn hard to walk away from. August 2026. That's when the trial is scheduled to begin. When it does, the world will be watching. A jury will hear evidence we haven't seen yet. Prosecutors will lay out their case, the digital footprint, the forensic evidence, the lack of an intruder, the alleged motive. Defense attorneys will fight back, poking holes in the timeline, questioning the reliability of the evidence, maybe even presenting alternative theories. Witnesses will take the stand, family members will testify, experts will debate brain development, culpability, and whether a 16-year-old can truly be held to the same standard as an adult. And at the end of it all, 12 people, 12 strangers, will decide Sarah Grace Patrick's fate. If she's convicted, she could spend the rest of her life in prison. If she's acquitted, she'll walk free. But she'll never escape the shadow of suspicion. Either way, there are no winners here. James and Kristen Brock are gone. A 5-year-old girl is traumatized for life. A family is shattered beyond repair. And the only thing we can do is wait. I want to be honest with you. I don't know what happened in that house on February 20th, 2025. I don't know if Sarah Grace Patrick is a cold-blooded killer or a wrongly accused teenager caught in a nightmare. But here's what I do know. This case is a tragedy on every single level. 2 people are dead. A child witnessed something no one should ever see. A teenager is sitting in jail, facing a future that might never include freedom. And a community is left asking questions that may never have satisfying answers. And maybe that's the hardest part. We want clear answers. We want to know who's guilty and who's innocent. We want justice to be simple, black and white, easy to understand. But real life, real crime, it's never that clean. So when that trial happens, and it will happen, I'll be here, covering every development, every twist, every revelation. Because this story isn't over, not by a long shot. And until then, all we can do is wait and wonder and try to make sense of something that might never make sense at all. All right, here's what I need from you before you go. After everything we've talked about, the evidence, the family divide, the unanswered questions, I want to know, guilty, innocent? Comment your verdict right now and tell me why. And here's the bigger question, the one that's been haunting me this entire time. Should a 16-year-old ever be tried as an adult for murder? Or is the justice system fundamentally broken when it comes to juvenile offenders? That's the debate I really want to see in the comments. Because this isn't just about Sarah Grace Patrick. This is about how we view justice, accountability, and redemption in this country. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, you're not just watching true crime, you're thinking about it. You're questioning it. And that's exactly the kind of community I want to build here. So if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button right now. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next case. Because trust me, we're just getting started. Stay curious, stay critical, and never stop asking the hard questions. I'll see you in the next one.